Explosion after explosion. Everyone knew what or who was around the neighborhood when the shuddering vibrations of these explosions shook the foundations of the city. A chase was underway, and the citizens of Musatafu had been informed of Ground Zero's involvement, instructed to stay indoors until the coast was clear. The culprit in this chase, an escapee from the commission, leapt and bounded across the rooftops of the city. You were hot on his heels, literally speaking, with Bakugou's explosions going off almost every couple of rooftops. With every leap, you realized how nimble and quick this culprit's movements were, utilizing his environment to maneuver himself without any hindrance despite that cloak he wore. Parkour. He was using parkour. Your specialty. Another explosion crashed just shy from the culprit's heels before he crashed onto another building, immediately righting himself back on his feet. This only aggravated the angry blonde pro-hero while he propelled himself in the sky.
Get back here, you bastard!
He roared, shooting another blast towards him. It missed. You hopped across the rooftops, feeling the inertia of gravity release and drag you with every step, hoping to gain more ground from the environment. So far, your advantage was velocity, in hopes that you could reach the man without having to experience whatever his quirk was. In a flash, one of Bakugou's mortar-like bombs exploded on impact close to the culprit, the man slipping and rolling across the next rooftop ahead of you, momentarily losing any flow from his movements. With a grunt, you leapt into the air, releasing some of the weights from your ankles to give you enough leverage to soar. That minor slip-up must be enough to capture him, you thought. It would save everyone the time spent chasing him all the way through Musatafu. Until he landed on his feet without a hitch, outstretching his arms towards you, ready to grab your descending form. You panicked, crashing into the man and tumbling across the rooftop, wrestling against his taller frame until he rolled onto you. He took the high ground, trapping you underneath him before he immediately pressed his thumb onto the center of your forehead. You grabbed a hold of his wrist tightly, hearing the faint roar of Bakugou in the distance calling out to you. A light appeared above you in the shape of a glyph, glowing golden from the culprit's hand.
Sorry, sweetheart.
He purred until a warm feeling spread across your face. Light showered around you, followed by a deep and resonating boom that shook you to the core, drowning all sound until it went dark. Blinded by the light upon his descent, Bakugou's feet skidded across the rooftop before he tripped and tumbled from the delirium. He huffed, feeling the pinch of pain across his skin and eyeing the fleeting form of the escapee across the rooftops, before he disappeared over the buildings ahead.
Kirishima, the guy's heading your way,
informed Bakugou through his earpiece. An affirmative from Kirishima relieved Bakugou of his duty before he turned towards you. Or, rather, what was left of your clothes.
Twinkle toes?
He asked, warily approaching the pile of clothes that draped across the floor. Prior to the chase, Bakugou and yourself had been briefed on the type of quirk the culprit had, and for Bakugou, it was very similar to Eri's quirk, his heart dropping at the thought of finding nothing where you once stood. A rustle in your clothes took him by surprise, finding your head pop out from underneath, staring up at him with oblivious wonder. Bakugou's breath hitched in his chest upon seeing a child, you, sitting amongst your outfit. He was part relieved that you hadn't disappeared from existence, but the alternative wasn't a pleasant surprise either.
Katsuki?
You called, realizing the sound of your voice.
What do I do with you?
Groaned Bakugou, dragging his hand across his face before he peered through his fingers at your tiny form. The sound of your small grunts caught his attention while you swam around your outfit, your smaller than regular hands digging through the whole fabric. Bakugou continued to watch you, intrigued and curious of your sudden panicking, until a large smile beamed on your face. In your small fingers, you pulled a ring from amongst your clothes, the band now too large to fit around any of your digits. Bakugou smirked as quickly as he had shunned it away, walking up to you and taking the ring from your hands.
Mine!
You called with your hands outstretched in the air.
Can't trust you with it.
He replied, pocketing the tungsten ring in his pants.
No, it's mine!
You called again while you fumbled through your outfit, your small limbs digging their way out from the mess you laid in. Your movements caught Bakugou by surprise as he immediately, without thinking, scooped you up in his arms, covering yourself with all the folds of your outfit and keeping you still. Slightly panic-stricken, he scanned the rooftops while keeping you under wraps, literally, before he made his way from any public eyes. He was relieved many of the civilians stayed indoors to not be witnesses to the unfortunate turn of events. Instead of returning to his agency, Bakugou decided to swing by his place, calling in to inform of the situation. Despite the nervous replies and energy he could hear through the earpiece of his phone, he announced to his manager that he'll be staying put until the situation resolved itself, loosely watching you in his lounge room, wearing one of his old shirts and luckily finding a pair of undergarments to keep yourself decent.
What? You're not coming in? What am I supposed to say to the media, or even the sidekicks at the agency? How am I— That's your problem. You'll figure something out. You always do. Wait, Buck?
Bakugou took a deep breath, slightly irate from the manager's anxiety and relieved to just hang up. He glanced behind him, eyeing your clothes, only to find nothing but your clothes on his couch.
Lightweight.
He called, his voice stained with a slight panic wavering in its tone. His eyes darted around the room, finding no small body in sight.
Where the hell did you run off to?
His apartment wasn't large, but it wasn't small either. The studio apartment was plenty spacious, and hardly had any nook or cranny for a small human being to hide in. That was until something caught his eye from above. Bakugou panicked at the sight of you floating on the ceiling. In fact, crawling on the ceiling, looking down at him with a wave and a smile on your face.
Get down from there!
He yelled.
Can't catch me!
You playfully chirped. razzing your tongue at him.
Duh, you're as annoying as you are as an adult. Drop yourself now.
You simply ignored his threats while you tied the shirt to keep it from falling over your head, sitting on the ceiling as if it were the floor. Before Bakugou knew what you planned, you stood on your feet and began running across the room, staying as far away from Bakugou as you could. It became a chasing game to you.
You dumbass! Come down here!
Yelled Bakugou, irate, jumping after you while he attempted to grab you from the ceiling. Despite your small legs, you nimbly made your way around his apartment without any recourse. It surprised Bakugou on your grasp of your quirk, considering the number of clumsy moments you had when you were an adult. Then, suddenly, mid-jump in the air, you descended towards the floor. Your laughter immediately turned into a squeal, until you felt your body grabbed by a large hand, pulling you into his chest before the both of you crashed onto the timber floor. Bakugou growled, frustrated and mad, until his eyes stared down into yours, ready to let out a scornful scoff. Instead, he stopped, finding you staring up at him with regret, huddled in his arms that protected you from an imminent fall.
I'm sorry.
You uttered with a warble in your tone, tears ready to spring from the corner of your eyes. Normally, Bakugou would reprimand you for the clumsiness, but in the state you were in, it was harder than normal to scorn you with your mistakes. He sighed exasperatedly, attempting to rid himself of the irritation he felt boiling inside.
Did I hurt you?
You asked, meekly, watching Bakugou's scowl descend upon your gaze. You semi-froze in place, wondering what he was thinking. If he thought less of you because you were—
No, you didn't.
He flatly replied.
Tuh, you're kidding me? Something like that wouldn't even get me to break a sweat.
Whoa! Really? You sound like my favorite hero.
Interest piqued. Now curious of your most inner childish thoughts, Bakugou held onto you while he lifted himself up from the floor, careful to keep you in his grip.
Oh yeah? Who?
She flies around and she destroys anything in her way. Like, phew! And pow!
You continue to swing your arms in the air, play fighting and mimicking actions, still with Bakugou's eye on you. You shrieked, realizing he lifted you in the air, holding you high as if you too were flying, until a burst of laughter cried from within your lungs.
You like flying, huh?
Asked Bakugou, watching that smile beam larger on your face.
Then get ready for some dogfights!
The evening spent was almost play fighting while Bakugou swooped you through his apartment, dipping and diving, tossing and tumbling. Eventually Bakugou realized who you described and yet could not recall the name of such a hero. The predecessor of his own idol, All Might, much to his own knowledge and recollection of any history. Yet, witnessing your passion, albeit naive point of view at this age, made him laugh haughtily, which in turn received a few small kicks to the shins. Soon, night fell, while his apartment glowed alight. He sat by the foot of the bed, eyeing your now sleepy form on his pillows. For someone who had this newfound energy, you tuck it out quite easily, cracking a smile on Bakugou's lips at the sight of you. He shook his head, wondering how you became the person you were, until a small hand held him back from leaving the bed. Your fingers grasped onto a few of his, but you never woke, still in some form of reverie. You whispered, with a small yawn escaping your mouth.
Get some sleep. Lightweight,
spoke Bakugou, slipping his fingers away from yours. He decided sleeping on his couch was ideal. According to the Commission's info, the effects should wane by the morning. Bakugou grumbled, feeling all aches in his shoulders and lower back. Despite earning a decent income, he never bothered finding a more comfortable couch to sleep on, cursing to himself in his head about the circumstance he now shared. His neck felt numb while he stretched and contorted his muscles from the stiffness they suffered until a tug on his hand caught him unaware. Peeking through his blurry and sleep-driven eyes, the sunlight shone into his apartment, painting a figure that laid by the floor beside the couch, your hand grasping onto his, holding his knuckles against your cheek. He stared down, finding a full-grown person. You, covered wholly by his shirt alone, dragging the linen from his bed to cover yourself draped on the floor. He hummed to himself, curious and yet proud of the fact that you weren't floating off the ground, still holding his hand as if he were the anchor. Slowly, he dug in his pocket, finding your ring again, now in his fingers before he carefully slid it back onto yours, the piece of jewelry now a perfect fit. A moment passed with nothing from you, still sound asleep, until Bakugou carefully made his way to join you on the floor atop the rug. He slid under the covers, holding you close to his chest and embracing your form against his. His head laid onto the crook of your neck, finding you moving slightly against his shape until you fit perfectly. Mine, you softly groaned, still asleep.
Yeah, Twinkle Toes. Mine.
He whispered back, his arms encircling around you, drifting to sleep in the early morning. Thank you for tuning in to another fanfiction reading. If you like what I do or would prefer to just fall asleep to my voice, please hit that like button, ring that bell, and subscribe to my channel. And trust me, more to come soon. Thank you for visiting. I hope to hear from you soon, next we meet.